Hello everyone, I am Sumit Bobade and on the behalf of Bajaj Science Center Varda, I would like to welcome you all. Today I am looking forward to talk with you about force. So let's start. So in this session we are going to cover all these topics one by one. Okay, and we know everything we do in our daily life requires some forces. Even if we are standing or sitting, some forces are acting on us. Look at some examples like pushing a trolley or then closing and opening the window and carrying the number of heavy books. In all such situations, what we did is we applied a force to the body, and as a result of which the body has started moving. You can observe here when we push a trolley, the trolley has started moving. And if we want to open the window, we need to push it. Or if we want to close the window, we need to pull it. Now look at this picture. The boy is carrying the number of books. In this situation, we have to apply, the boy have to apply the force for carrying the heavy books. But the question is, what is force? To understand what is force, look at the simple definition of the force. A force is a push or a pull on an object. And this is what you will assume after reading the definition. You will imagine the stationary object on a ground and someone is pushing it or pulling it. Yes, when the force is applied, the stationary object will move. But this does not tell you the concept of force entirely. Before we move on, let's clear some misconceptions about it. Let me ask you a question. This man is at rest standing on a ground. So he is stationary, not moving at all. So is there any force acting on him? I repeat my question. Are there any forces acting on a man when he is at rest? If your answer is no, then you didn't know the concept of force yet. The answer is yes. There are forces acting on this man. There is the gravitational force, which is trying to pull the man towards the center of the earth, and the ground is exerting an equal amount of force exactly in the opposite direction. And this force is known as normal force. Because these two forces are balanced force, they do not change the position of the man. The net force acting on a man is zero. So what does this tell you? Pushing or pulling is not the only kind of force. And just because of forces are acting on an object does not imply that the objects are moving. For an object to move, there has to be some net forces, and the net forces should not be equal to zero. Okay. And one more interesting fact about the forces are due to an interactions. Okay. So as we know, the interaction involves two objects. In an interaction, each object acts in such a way as to have an effect on the other object. Interaction of an object with another object result in the force between two objects. At least two objects must interact with each other for a force to come into existence. If there is no interaction between two objects, no force can show its effect. Suppose a man is standing behind the car. Okay, and there is no interaction between the man and a car. So force acts on a car. Sorry. So there is no force acts on a car, and hence a car does not move. If the man pushes a car, then this the car starts moving. That means there is an interaction between the car and a man, and this interaction makes it move in the direction of the applied force. Also, if both the objects are capable of applying forces on each other, then the interaction between them can be pushing or pulling. Let's take an example. Here, the two girls are interacting and applying force on each other by pushing each other. Okay, and here is the man and the cow are interacting and applying a force on each other by pulling each other. So this is all about the forces due to an interactions. Okay, so we have just seen the definition of the force. Now we will discuss the effect of forces. Did you ever wonder what makes an object to slow down or to move faster or to change its direction of motion? Okay, to understand this, let's consider a simple scenario. Here, the children are playing football. Now, after noticing their motion, one should have the questions in his mind, like what did they do to make this ball move, or what did they do to make this moving ball to move faster? Also, what did they do to change the direction of this moving ball? And the answer is, in all these cases, a force is required to make the ball move, to make the moving ball move faster, and to make the moving ball stop. And also, to change the direction of the moving ball, the force is required. It means that with the help of force, the ball is either made to move faster or slower, or its direction of the motion can be changed. Also imagine if one of the boy presses the ball to check the air in the ball, then what happens? As the force is applied on the ball by pressing, the shape of the ball changes for some time. It means that by applying the force, we can change the shape of the ball. So hence, we can conclude that the force can change the shape and size of the object. The force can make an object move from rest. A force can stop a moving object, and then the force can change the speed of the moving object. And also, the force can change the direction of the moving object. Okay, so these are the effects of the forces. So there are various types of the forces. The variety of forces were placed into two broad categories. The first is the contact force, and the second one is the non-contact force. On the basis of whether the force resulted from the contact or non-contact of the two interacting objects, these two categories are made. Okay, so first we will understand what is contact force. Contact force are those types of forces that results when the two interacting objects are noticed to be physically contacting with each other. Muscular force, frictional force, and mechanical force are included in the contact forces. Then second is the non-contact force. Non-contact force are those types of forces that results even when the two interacting objects are not in physical contact with each other, and it involves gravitational force, electrostatic force, and magnetic force. Now, these types of individual forces will be discussed in more details. Okay, so the first one is the muscular force. The force exerted by the muscles of the body is called as the muscular force. The human being exerts a muscular force for performing the various activities like walking, jumping, climbing, lifting, pushing, pulling, and many more. Some of the examples are lifting the weight during the workout, then pulling a man with a rope, lifting the bucket uh, full of water is also an example of the muscular forces. In a horse driven cart, the muscular force is shown by a horse while the while pulling the loaded cart. In human body, the beating of the heart also takes place by the muscular forces, which is produced by the cardiac muscles. So, the force applied with the help of muscles is known as muscular forces, and it is contact force. Okay, the next one is the frictional force. The frictional force is a force that exerts by the surface of the object moves across it. There are two types of the frictional forces. First is sliding and then is static friction. The friction force often opposes the motion of the object. For example, if the wooden box sliding across the surface of the desk, then the desk exert the frictional force in the opposite direction of the motion. Carom and the sliding book on a desk are the examples of the frictional forces. So, frictional force refers to the force generated by the two surfaces that comes into contact and they slides against each other. So, the frictional force is a contact force. Okay, then the next is mechanical force. We use force of tractors to do work on a farm. We use the force of the motor vehicles from time to time. Machines are used to do many works in factories, offices, and homes. This force that is applied using the machine is called as the mechanical force. Are you getting? The force that is applied using the machine is called as the mechanical forces. For example, sewing machine, then mixer, electric pump, and washing machine are the examples of the mechanical force. So, the mechanical force is also a type of contact forces. Okay, then the next is the gravitational force. So, what happens when you jump in the air? You came down. What happens when you throw a ball up? It comes down. And why do the fruits on the trees falls to the ground? Why does everything come down? The earth pulls everything towards itself, and this force is known as gravity or the gravitational force. It is because of gravity that any object that is thrown upward goes slower and slower and then stops and then starts coming down. Now let us see what happens when we throw a ball upward. Okay, we give it a force in the upward direction, and so the ball is starts moving in upward direction. The speed of the ball reduces more and more, and slowly it becomes zero. Why does the speed of the ball go on reducing? Because the ball is trying to move up and the gravity is trying to pull it down. The gravity makes the ball slower when it moves up. When the speed of the ball becomes zero, it cannot go up anymore, and so the ball start to come down. Okay, why does it come down? Because the gravity is pulling it down. So the force applied by the earth to pull object toward itself is the gravitational force. Are you getting? What is the gravitational force? The force applied by the earth to pull the object towards itself is the gravitational force. Then the next is the magnetic force. Yes, we all are very familiar with the magnets. Now, if we bring the pins near the magnet, what happens? The magnet attracts the pins and the pins stuck to the magnet. What is the force that is pulling the pins towards the magnet? It is the magnetic force. If magnets have different ways in which they can behave. We have we know that when two like poles of the magnet comes together, they repel, while the unlike poles attracts. Simple. It is the magnetic force that makes them attract or repel. Magnets are useful to separate iron object in the junkyard. So, the magnetic force are a non-contact force. Are you getting? Okay. Then the next one is the electrostatic force. Now look at this picture. You can see hairs are pulling toward the comb. What is that force which pulls the hair toward the comb? It is the force of static electricity, and it is called as static electric force. Now try to bring the comb that you have rubbed on your hair close to the bit of the dry paper. Okay, the bit of the dry paper will try to stick to the comb. So the comb is attracting the bits of paper. When you rub the comb on a hair, on your hair, you created the static electricity, and this force attracted the paper. You created the static electricity when you rub the comb with your hair. This force of static electricity attracted the piece of the paper. Try the same by taking the balloon instead of the comb. You will get the same result. So, the electrostatic force is a force exerted by a charged body on another uncharged body. Okay, so electrostatic force is a very weak force. You cannot see it moving the heavy objects, and it is a non-contact force. Okay, so now let's summarize what we have discussed today. We have learned the force is a push or a pull on an object, and forces are divided into two main categories, that is contact force and the non-contact force. The contact force are the forces that acts between the two objects that are physically touching each other. Contact forces involves the muscular force, frictional force and mechanical force. And non-contact force are those forces that acts between two objects that are not physically touching with each other. Examples of the non-contact force include gravitational force, electrostatic force and the magnetic force. And we have seen already the examples of which. I hope you all have understood the terms related to the force. Now, to check your understanding, try to perform the simple activity and collect the informations about the various forces in our daily life. So try to collect more information about the various forces and forces that are used in our day-to-day life, and make a list of such actions where many forces are applied simultaneously. Okay, and you can also try the simple activity of water bending with the power of static electricity. You need the plastic rod, piece of the cloth and running water, and what you do is what you need to do is rub the surface of the rod with the cloth for 40 seconds, and then turn on the tap so there is a steady stream of the water. Then put the rod near the water and watch it bend. Okay, so this activity you have to perform in your home. And the next activity is flying plastic bag. To perform this activity, you need plastic rod, piece of cloth, and the light plastic bag. And these are the steps. First, you have to rub the surface of the rod with the cloth for 40 seconds. Then the flatten plastic bag and rub the cloth against its surface for 40 seconds. And then, sorry, and then you need to release the plastic bag and watch it levitate as you wave the rod below. Okay, so these two activity you need to perform in your home. Okay, and these are my references. Thank you.